Thank you for the invitation to come and talk to you today. We'll start with our synopsis. What I am going to cover is to look at different typologies of citizen science. We'll first look at what kind of activities included in what we today call citizen science. Then we'll look at the goals and activities types, typology, and finally two typologies that help us in understanding the relationship between scientists and participants. Our first typology is looking at what type of activities are included in what we call citizen science. We have the long-running citizen science activities that sometimes run for over 150 years with people participating in weather observation or ecological observation. We have citizen cyber science, which rely on internet and computing in order to operate, and community science, which is all about bottom-up activities which community are leading by themselves. So let's look at some examples of what type of activities fall into this area. So the Community Collaborative Rail, Hail and Snow Network, or COCORAS, has started in 1998 and engaged people in recording precipitation around their area. This information is then provided at a larger scale, and you can see on the map how many points there are, and it already helps in early warning of floods. In citizen cyber science, we can look at tasks like this one, volunteer computing, where people download a software that allows scientists to use their computing devices in order to calculate an activity that involves nanotubes and filtering water. In community science, there are activities like participatory sensing. This is an example from the Every Aware project, where a software that allows people to record the level of noise that they are exposed to, allow them also to decide when and where to collect it, and that was carried out around Heathrow. Also within community sciences, do-it-yourself science, examples are now available of open hardware like this one, a sensor for humidity and temperature that can be done very easily and allow people to create devices that suits exactly their needs. Now that we've seen the activities, we can take the different zones that we are familiar with from PostNormal Science, the applied, the professional consultancy, and the PostNormal Science area, and consider how the activities fits within this framework. Our first example will be volunteer computing. So here's a current example where your phone can support science that will analyze different issues around coronavirus. You download it, it's black boxed, it's very applied from both the participant level, but also from the scientist. It is a computing environment like others. Passive sensing involves people providing a sensor that streams data, like this example of a weather station that is then can be linked to the IBM weather underground system. In passive sensing, people are providing information that while weather information is uncertain, the fact of observation and the data collection is very well established. Volunteer thinking gets us into the area of professional consultancy or the normal science, where we can see people that contribute through cognitive efforts. So in this case, they are helping scientists to analyze health record, and there are many projects of this sort within the Zooniverse platform. Ecological observations are another example of participation which give us higher uncertainty, which is why we need all these observations, and there is a whole discussion within ecology around data quality and the modeling based on participants. but it's still within the mainstream ecological research. As we noted, participatory sensing can involve different ways where participants already decide where and what to sense. So odor collect is an example of using the human ability to smell in order to record different incidents and share information about the environment. There can be a situation where this is used with a polluting factory and therefore the stakes can be higher. DIY science also provides us with an example of the PostNormal Science, because now people are setting up their own system in their own configuration. And in this case of a flood network, there is an issue about how this information interfaces and used with official information. So far with that type of situation where stakes are high, we haven't seen good and full integration between environmental authorities and participants. Community science or civic science deal with contentious issues like this example from the development of high-speed rail link 2 in the UK, where the community is concerned with air quality. Here, people are using diffusion tubes, a simple device for measuring air quality, in order to have a baseline. The stakes are clearly high and the facts are clearly uncertain. Finally, we can think about the quantified self, where people say measuring their own performance with devices like this one or Fitbit. And here the uncertainty about the personal situation can be high, but the decision stakes are limited with the fact that a lot of time it's about the individuals. There are cases that divert from that, but generally speaking, that is the case. Our next typology looks at primary goal and the physical environment in which the project is happening. So this one is from Wiggins and Croston, and it describes the following options. They describe project as action-oriented, where they are trying to make an issue or deal with local issue. Conservation project, which are mostly about natural resource management. Investigation projects that are trying to achieve a research goal and requiring some data collection. Virtual project, and here it is important to note that in this classification virtual volunteer computing is excluded. An education project where the main goal is education and outreach. We will position the investigation project at the applied science because the participants are required to collect data, usually under very strict standards, to act as an instrument. There are cases where it can be argued that it belongs to the middle tier, and you should think about it in that way. Education, on the other hand, is very clearly something that is well structured and clearly within the applied. The virtual project belong to the area of normal science because they are operating as a way to contribute data in forms like our volunteer thinking. Conservation is gaining uncertainty and importance and getting further towards the post-normal science because the decision stakes in natural resource management are higher. But it is the action-oriented project in this classification that clearly go into the post-normal. The next classification is called for short the 5C classification. It came out from work by Bonnie in 2009 and then Shirk expanded it in 2012. It talks about 5 types of project. Contractual, where communities hire professionals to carry out research for them. A contributory project, where scientists design a project and ask people to participate in it, contribute data, or do some work. Collaborative project, where the scientists are in lead, but there is an opportunity to refine question and improve it. co-created projects which are created together from the start, and collegial project where the public is creating their own project and not always expecting recognition from institutionalized science. So again, if we position them within our different zones, contractual is clearly applied because the scientists are carrying out the work in a contractual form. There will be sometimes when it's a bit more open, but it belongs to that area, maybe slightly a bit higher. The contributory project belong to the heart of normal science, and that's the most common types of citizen science. The collaborative is interesting because it lives at the boundary. It starts with scientists doing their own things, but then opening it up to the public. The co-created will live somewhere in the area of the post-normal, and finally the collegial is clearly an example where it's bottom-up, it's creating new opportunity, and it's starting to ask different questions about science. Also because communities will ask questions when it's critical for them. Finally, my classification from 2013, which point to different levels. So crowdsourcing, when it's mostly operating as sensors, distributed intelligence, where we use the skills of the participant either through ecological observation or through a interpretation with a computer. Participatory science, where there is an involvement in problem definition and data collection, but analysis carried out by the scientist. And the extreme citizen science, where the whole process is happening with the community, maybe with support of scientists. So again, we will see in these zones that crowdsourcing is in the applied area. The distributed intelligence, just like the contributory and the other example, is somewhere within the professional consultancy or the normal science. The participatory science, it's somewhat similar to the collaborative, although it's raising the stakes somewhat. And the extreme citizen science, well within the post-normal, because also a lot of time it will happen when communities are coming with a need that require urgent handling. So let's have few observations. First of all, the classifications that allow themselves along the diagonal of post-normal science between low uncertainty and stakes to high. A lot of citizen science activity are within the realm of the normal science and the applied, and that's a lot of it is because of it. It's the project owner find it easier to handle it this way. Also, we point that within this area, citizen science is providing democratization in the sense of who is allowed to do science and very limited degree of how to do the science. So there is no challenges to the ontology and a methodology of how things are being done. The next thing that we can point about the activities that fall within post-normal science is that there are activities of this side. They are usually small scale. They attracted a lot of interest, and there is literature on them, especially in the science and technology studies, but they don't get the support or the openness that will make them grow and become more active. So what post-normal science analysis allow us is both to notice where they are, but also to notice on the potential directions where things can go. So thank you for listening, and I hope that this overview of citizen science and its position within post-normal science was relevant and not too confusing.